Welcome to Operator Debrief. Today I'm going to be sitting here with one of my heroes, the legendary John Burns. I'm excited to have him here today, and just enjoy the show. All right. Well, everybody, welcome back to Operator's Debrief. We're on with John Burns for part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, highly recommend you go back. It's extremely action-packed about his little bit of his life before Black Hawk Down, and then the part he played there, and it's nonstop excitement, and it's pretty intense, pretty exciting story. Before we get started, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. The more subscriptions we get, the more of these we can put out. And then if you can take that like button and put it in a rear naked choke, I'd appreciate it. And the one last thing I'd like to just share is eventually we'll be coming out with our t-shirt line. This is our Tactical Frankenstein. I'll let you know once our t-shirt store's up, and just be on the lookout for it. So, real quick, for those who haven't watched part 1s, Mr. Burns here is pretty big legend in the Ranger Regiment. Awesome dude. Like me, but better looking. And a little bit younger, maybe. But, sir, so glad to have you back, man. Last time was a good time. I didn't want it to end.
Yeah, it's good. Well, we got plenty of time.
Good.
So, I wanted to touch on a little bit of the aftermath of Mogadishu, the immediate aftermath of coming back to battalion, the order of events, what happened, and some things I've contemplated for 30 years, right? And I believe the reason I've contemplated them is so that today I could help Rangers return from war and find peace. So some of those things are, so I always tell people, so peace most days for Rangers, nothing more than a stubbornly persistent illusion, right? It's like something you think about, like, and then it becomes down to microseconds, right? But what you got to have is you got to have the ability to find people that been through it before and understand with empathy what you're going through, and then spend time together, and we need to get back to the microcosm of the Ranger mentality, the team, the squad, the platoon, and I'm gonna try to illustrate a couple reasons why. And one of them is, so in Walter Reed, I was in there with Rangers that I was shot 3 times, and I had shrapnel taken out of my left hip. And I was in there with guys that had lost limbs, some operators, and I was in there with Rangers that were worse off than me. And I say that, and 30 years later, back then I was 25. It was a decompression lesson, like it took me, that one firefight changed me in ways I didn't see. It took me 20 years to see what had changed, and it began when I was in Walter Reed. It began with I had a buddy from the unit who was in 3rd Battalion prior to that, who was my friend, who came up to Walter Reed to see me. He was in B Squadron, but he asked me if I wanted to go to the unit award ceremony. And so he took me behind. I was on crutches at the time, and I dressed in starch and spits, like Rangers do. Back then we had starch and spits.
Yeah.
And I was a newly scroll-bearing Ranger now. It went from being I never considered, when people asked me if I was a Ranger, I said, no, I was a bat boy. Yeah. What is that? I said, you ain't got all night. And all I got to say is buckle your bootstraps and watch, because it's a state of being. And that state of being is one of loyalty. It's one of devotion. And it's also one of spending a lifetime finding out if you're the man in the creed, the man with the scroll on his right shoulder, You know, we have it on our left shoulder while we serve, and then we get to go do what we do, and then you're awarded that right shoulder scroll, and it's like your life changes because it becomes a vacuum. And the thing is about that vacuum is the only people you can ever tolerate again are people who went through it.
Yeah.
That's what right? The rest of your life you're going to spend tolerating people that, you're going to always compare them to your moments earning that scroll on your right shoulder. And it becomes unhealthy in a way, but you don't have a bunch of Rangers around you. In my case, when I got back to battalion, so I went to the unit award ceremony up at Fort Bragg, and all their dead guys received Silver Stars. And then I went back to Walter Reed, and I was told I was flying back to Fort Benning, and they were having an award ceremony where our dead were going to receive awards for heroism. The first thing I noticed is, why are all our guys getting Bronze Stars for Valor, right? And I was like, our Ranger lives not as important. And I became a little bit of a pariah, man. I started to notice things that got me a little bit of trouble because I wasn't good at keeping my mouth shut with leadership and stuff. And I started to notice it was like everything I believed about being in a Ranger squad, platoon, was in my eyes. I was challenging it, right? Because it seemed like the predisposition to, I'm like, the regiment failed, man. If their dead guys receive Silver Stars, our dead guys should all receive Silver Stars. And they've since fixed that. It took 30 years. But the truth is, and I said this a long time ago. I said, the truth is about October 3rd, 1993, is JSOC got exposed in a very good way. We learned a lot of good lessons. And in another way is, so on October 3rd, guys that were really highly trained died. Rangers with moderate training died. And guys that just got there died, right? In the end, they were dead, man. And to me, it was like a moment where I began to question, who am I really as a Ranger leader? To me, I had coming from another unit as a sergeant to the regiment back then was like I explained, it was tough, right? But I respected the infrastructure of what made a bat boy, a guy who served every day. And I didn't look to like impose because I had 3 stripes that I was something better than anybody. What I did was always say, they're all better than me. I've never been to RIP. Now I went to Ranger Orientation, but I've never been to RIP. So, and there were 2 types. What I encountered was 2 leadership models. One failed, and one, ended up working out. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So I always looked at my Ranger squad as people I needed to, even as a fire team leader, I was like, I'm not as good as these guys. I got to get better. I'm not as good as my riflemen. I'm not good as, those guys went on to, you talk about legends, Dave Easterbrook for like 18 years in the regiment. Reese Tico had like 24. He's been through every position from squad leader to sergeant major in combat, in the regiment. And these were guys that I believe God placed in my life to teach me lessons about leadership. And so I never looked at myself as any better. And then there was another leadership model where guys felt the need to just smoke someone to the point where they quit, not because they weren't able to do it. It was just, it was terrible. And I'm going to tell you what made me realize it. When I became weapons squad leader, I had 3 guys in Ranger school at one time, right? And I had another guy fell out of a Jeep, busted his head. He had stitches in his head, couldn't deploy. And we were jumping into 29 Palms, California. And 2 of the guys were brand new. So who's going to jump the gun? Who's going to jump a machine gun, right? It was a thing like, man, I needed every guy I got. And to me, if they made it through RIP, they've already proven they should be here. Now it's a matter of my responsibility is to teach them what they need to know to not only stay here, but to become proficient. And the teacher's only as good as his student. You're always good as a student. So when I got back, I also loved to fight for my guys. You know what I mean? I didn't care at first. Sorry, what are you going to do? Get rid of me? That kind of thing. But I'm saying that because it didn't happen often. But when I did, I fought for them. And after Somalia, the whole combat awards thing, right? Like I learned some things about myself, right? And what I smiled most about is I figured out I was probably pretty close to being the guy in the creed, I was pretty, and that was enough for me. But it seemed like there was non-congruent message about the regiment understanding what they had gone through, what Bravo Company had gone through. And I think now they're in a rectification mode. They're giving everybody, not giving everybody, they're starting to realize what role Rangers played in the events of October 3rd. And begrudgingly, but awesomely, I'm so glad that these guys finally got, noticed. To me, that's just who I am, man. Now, the second thing, or the next thing was, the thing I think I ended up on levy because of, I made the E7 list with like 7 years in the Army back then in the regiment. And the sergeant major at the time, God rest his soul, was a guy named Ralph Bean. But me and him had a issue when he was first sergeant Charlie Company, when I was living in the NCO billets at the end of Charlie Company. And I went away to Panama City with Rick Merritt. We were both young leaders. Come back, and Ralph Bean, going through a divorce, the first sergeant moved all my stuff out of the room, like took the liberty to put it in the B Company candy room. I came home to all my stuff, unsecure, personal stuff, my tea. And I'm thinking, so me and him kind of bumped heads. And he was like, it was like, but I was like, anyway. And he was the sergeant major when we got back from Somalia. And I started to question certain leaders and gotten some. I say this not that I'm Superman. I said it because I felt like Rangers needed to learn from the mistakes they made. And the first thing you got to do is actually confront them. We're going to go to war again, and Rangers are going to be asked to do things. And if you can't tell them what the guys that came before you did wrong, is that Ranger leadership? Is it really Ranger leadership? So that was bugging me. And maybe I'm an anomaly, but that was how it felt. So I got to kind of. And then Sergeant Major Beam, I had gotten to in an argument with the battalion commander at the time, like a little scuffle, not scuffle, but we had words about some things. He wanted me to talk to this author that was writing the book, and he brought us all up to the battalion. What did they call it back then? It was like, I forget. They called it like a skiff today, but it was like the room where they did all the briefings. They brought us up there. They had a big desk. And they got some privates, some corporals and specialists. And then they got me, and I'm on crutches, and I'm in there. We're talking to this guy who was a Vietnam veteran. And he labeled himself as America's most decorated living veteran. Okay. His name was David Hackworth. And the battalion commander at the time brought this guy in. We had no idea who he was. And I'd never talked to anybody. I always thought what we did should stay inside. So I was kind of upset. I'm like, I don't want to talk to this guy. Okay, he's and anyway, let's just say I kind of bucked a little bit. And then when I did talk to him, I really didn't want to talk to him about things that matter. But it put a bad taste in my mouth. And I think the sergeant major locked me up, put me in detention, told me, this. And then I ended up on levy to go to Italy. But I had to heal up first, right? And I had a year off. They let me go to the special skills shop where I would just like be in charge of the halo parachutes and the scuba gear. And they also let me use my GI Bill to go to college. And John Burns, after combat with no supervision, I'm only reporting to chicks that are 19. You know what I mean? I'm 25 years old, got a brand new car. So it was a train wreck waiting to happen. You know what I mean? I thrived when I had accountability to Rangers every day. And the wheels in my life, the wheels never come off one at a time, man. It seems like the whole cart crashes, wheels fall off, So what began to happen is I began to medicate. I had to have a couple more bone grafts. I was eating pain pills, drinking beer, all the time, and it led to me when they told me I needed to go to ANOC in September. I'm like, man, I can't even run. I'm on P3 profile, man. I got into steroids, man. And that was the beginning of the downfall, man. I started, like, it wasn't enough to just do steroids. I read a magazine where you could go buy them in Europe. And I bought a ticket. I flew over to Europe, and I brought back a whole bunch of steroids, man. And needless to say, everybody was giving them to everybody, right? And then when I went to Italy, I went to Poland, and I bought them at this flea market. I came back, and I mailed them. And I mailed like 5 packages, and one of them got caught. So I'm an E6 promotable platoon sergeant who's been to ANOC in Italy with under 8 years in the Army, and we're getting ready to go to Bosnia, and the feds, intercepted a package, and they thought it was some great conspiracy, and they bring me in CID, and they want me to tell them like other Rangers had something to do with it, and they're like, we know, and I'm like, dude, it was just me, man, I did it, you know what I mean? And they actually brought it to the point where we got a witness, you're a liar, and they charged me with lying, and the Army put me out. They reduced me in rank to E2, sent me home. I had no benefits other than honorable discharge, and I had a wife that was pregnant at the time, so we went to Florida, and to add insult to injury, the federal government picked up the case, and they charged me in the Middle District of Georgia. So I had to move back to Columbus, Georgia, and turn myself in. I ended up doing 6 months eventually in federal prison. But before that happened, the wheels fell off, and I started doing dope. I actually ended up homeless, living under the bridge on 4th Avenue in Columbus, and shooting dope. I didn't care. I just didn't want to feel the way I felt, man. I started doing heroin. And my buddy down in Florida, Jim Monahan, served in Somalia, gave me this old white Aerostar van, and I just started living in it, man, going to the YMCA, taking showers, surviving. But I just lost all, I had a bad taste in my mouth, man. But at the same time, I was beginning to confront, what were the deeper issues? What made me get to this point? It wasn't all about the Ranger. And I thought, man, war made me focus on only what divides us as human. If I'm ever going to fucking make it out here finding peace, I got to figure out what unites us. And even hardship, even in doing drugs, I never compromised. I never stole anything to buy drugs. I went to work every day. I was working for an ex-Ranger building fences, as long as I had my shot of dope at night and in the morning, drank beer, went to work, that was my thing, and then when I finally went to federal prison, I was a heroin addict. And I turned myself in on my 29th birthday, man, and went to the federal prison camp. And they bring you under this wall, which is a maximum security prison, and they do what's called 3 days of designation. They got to figure out if you're suicidal, all these things. And I'm going through drug withdrawals, right? So here I am going through heroin withdrawals. I'm in a cell, and this big black guy, they opened the cell, and he's got library books, man. It was like something out of I forget that movie with Tom Hanks, and he handed me a Bible, and he says, white boy, you going to leave here the way you got here? And I didn't even know what to do with the Bible, man. I just remember the last time I ever read a Bible was when I was 10 years old. And I remembered that my roommate, Dan Bush, who was in Somalia, who was killed as a sniper, who was in, Delta, and then before that was in 3rd Battalion. He told me something that made me question the religion I had, that my parents brought me up under, which was Catholicism, but he made me question it when he said something to me when we were young. I was E5, he was E5 promoted, but he wasn't even promoted to E6 yet, a year before he went to selection. But he says, sin's not your problem. He goes, church is going to tell you sin's your problem. He goes, sin ain't your problem. He goes, how you intend to answer God for sin is your problem. And that night, the only thing I knew to do was open the Bible that he opened every night and figure out what he was talking about, man. And that was in 1999, and I've never stopped. And now I called it a ministry, but really it's just, I realized there was something about that book called the Bible that no one understood until you surrender. You can't, if you go at it from a religious perspective, you won't get it. If you go at it from an educated perspective, it'll go fly over your head because you're always trying to justify what you're reading. I just took it from a literature perspective, and I realized there was a message in there that wasn't the message that people that were religious was presenting. And the message was that we're all fucked up, and what's missing is the God who can get you over the hump, and when I thought about it from a perspective, he's the creator, I'm just part of creation. And I realized, if I was going to believe in God, he had to be bigger than my problems. So I didn't get clean. It took me another 10 years after prison. I even fucked up after prison. I never went back, but I started using it again for 2 weeks. And then I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I met a woman that I've been with now for 23 years, man. And she accepted me for my shortcomings. I didn't stop using dope. I still had a problem for a little while, but then one day I walked in, I got on a VA methadone program, and started drinking that methadone, but I was working every day, and I kind of got my shit together. And I applied for a military discharge review board hearing, and they were like, oh man, the crime doesn't fit the punishment. I got my rank back and instated my benefits, and I was able to file for service-connected disability. And I got my service-connected disability, so then I filed, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to school, man. And I started back pre-engineering school. And a buddy who served in Somalia, called me and said that him and another guy were building this gas station. They bought this building in Columbus, and I had, construction history. I went over there to help him, and I fucking fell out of a 2-story window and cut my hand off. I cut my right hand off, man, and so I couldn't work. And then I was back struggling, but it was like, God, I believe it. I don't get mad about it. It was God getting my attention saying, be still. I got a mission for you, right? Be still. And it was at the same time the GWAT was kicking off, the invasion of Iraq. And I realized then I had to get serious about having a relationship to a God that was bigger than my problems, because my buddies were about to start coming home with problems bigger than mine, And that's where I didn't find religion. That's where I started to believe that this whole time people chase God and he's actually chasing us, So I realized I had a mission, man. And the mission was just be the squad leader I was, that had empathy and showed mercy. And I never fired anybody, man. That was amazing. Anybody that ever quit my squad quit because they couldn't run 11 minutes, 2 miles. It's what we did. I didn't yell at anybody. They'd end up saying, I can't do this. I'm out of here. But that was only about 2 or 3 people. But in that time, I felt like if guys went through RIP and they made it, who am I to not realize they're an asset? You know what I mean? They don't, and that's how I treat life now, man. And the Ranger Creed, it means so much to me, man, now, because I realized I had to find the tenets in my life that made me who I was. And the never shall I fail my comrades thing, too many people let it quit when they're out of the Army. Too many Rangers just let it go, man. And the word never ain't one of them words you debate how long it is, man, because it's infinity, right? It's this 0 times 0 is still 0. You can add 1 billion years to it. You say never, you better keep going until there's no more zeros left, Yeah. And out here, life's more unforgiving to a Ranger that fights for those he doesn't even agree with. So it's really more unforgiving, because your nature is to just want to choke somebody, punch, eye punch him, throat chop him. And you really got to take a step back out here, man, and realize, these people have never been where I've been. They've never put my shoes on. It doesn't make me any better. It's just that I understand, and I'm still one of those people that's a romantic about the regiment, man. I'm a romantic. I'm like, I always tell people, I could never know where I was going as a Ranger if I didn't know the people who came before me, where they've been. The World War II Rangers, Darby Rangers, them guys, the Vietnam guys, man. We're losing them just for age, cancer, all these things, right? And then we've got such an issue. The other thing, man, the suicide thing, right? Like, so I'm like, surrender's not a Ranger word, right? Like, I put myself through so much shit, right? But somehow along the way, just every time I got even close to feeling sorry for myself, something would happen that I couldn't. I had to do something to help somebody else. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a gift from God when he puts something in your way that makes you return to your Ranger roots. And the regiment, man, isn't something people outside of it will ever understand. I don't care what they say, man. It's a fraternity that's like no other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the most needed fraternity in America right now, but not for the reasons most Rangers would say. It's not a brawn thing. It's actually a humility thing, The world's crying out for leadership. And, we did all the brawn, we did all the brash, we did all the killing, right? Now, it doesn't work in the equation of being an American outside of war. So you got to totally shift, right? Like, you can't just hate people because you've never met them before or for what they look like. You can't do that anymore, man. I mean, and you shouldn't. But there's never been a time when Ranger leadership was needed in an America that needs men to be men. And I don't mean brawn. I mean, I always tell people, a man who can't cry can't possibly love another human being. Yeah. I'm a crier now, man. I cry about things that matter, man. When I lose buddies and stuff, I cry. And I don't not let my grandkids see that, man. We got to have the courage to let go of the things that are unhelpful. The only way to do that sometimes is get alone and let it all fucking cry out, and then get in the mirror and remember who you are and wash your face and put your head down, your hands in the plow, go back to sowing Ranger seeds in people's lives, man. And And it's needed now, man. It's needed now. After the pullout from Afghanistan, it's like Vietnam all over again. You know what I mean? All the sacrifices. I was home crying that day like no other, man. He was awful. Because in 1975, I was in my grandfather's living room, and that's the first time I heard that. If a man, a man who can't cry can't possibly love another. I'm in my grandfather's living room, and he was a World War II vet, and one of his sons went to Vietnam and was home now, and he's watching the pullout from Saigon, and they're throwing UH-1Hs, and I'm like 8 years old at the time, but I'm with my grandfather, and he starts crying. And all he said to me was, "A man who can't cry can't possibly love another." And it bothered him that the U.S. was losing, no matter how they try to paint it. We were losing, man. And in Afghanistan, the pullout has led to what's going on right now in the Middle East, the assertion of our enemies, and the way it went down, man, wasn't the way it should have went down. No matter how anybody tries to paint it shouldn't have went down that way. There's too many people who sacrificed too much, man.
And it wasn't going to go down that way. There's a change in leadership, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I know. Now we got to get busy getting guys healed, getting them home, getting them searching for peace. You know what I mean? Getting on a road where they feel comfortable. But yeah, I think we're at a crossroads, as a country, just based on my experiences as a young man in the regiment, my experiences after it, and I think I just have a different view on what makes America great, man. And what makes America great isn't a compromise of foundations, right? Like the compromise, it's a compromise with each other because of our foundations. You know what I mean? We got to find a way, and it doesn't mean we're out. There's 50% of the country has no moral compass. That's just the way it is, man. They don't tie morality to one man with one woman for life, raising family. I'm not, it sounds crazy. People can say what they want, man, but I can honestly say this with conviction that I think if the regiment went back and read the Ranger Creed, they get to that morally straight clause, and they actually had a tenet that they taught Rangers other than as long as you don't embarrass the regiment, do whatever you want, right? Well, doing whatever you want never leads to anything good. You know what I'm saying? And we'd help a lot of guys out. Like a moral compass, like killing people you've never met before, no matter how cool you may think it is when you're doing it, when you get home and you're older and you're mature and your grandkids ask you questions about it, you start to realize there's a soft spot that you're like, I never thought of that. You know what I mean? And you got to be able to confront that. And to do that, you got to have some tenet that governs what's my moral compass, what's my north-seeking needle. And it can't be your feelings, because Rangers do everything they can to hijack their own feelings, hide their own feelings, medicate their own feelings. It's got to be something, man, that governs you, man. Even if it's going back to the creed and going back to, I tell people, what's lost when a soldier dies in war is dreams, right? It starts with his dreams. He's dead. Then his buddies that were there with him, their dreams are gone because they wanted to grow old with him and tell stories about their feats. And then if he's married, he's got a wife, he's got kids, their dreams are gone. His parents' dreams are gone. So you got all these dreams, right? Well, then you get out, you realize your dreams are gone, he's gone, they're gone. And you're like, what do I do? And I offer a suggestion, man. I said, if you can't find your own dreams, man, figure out what your buddy's dreams were, right? And that's what gave me my moral compass. Dan Bush's dreams. He told me in Somalia, it was weird, and I tell people this. We were talking about it, and this is what made me think about it 27 years later was Dan told me he dreamed of three things for the rest of his life. He dreamed that he'd be able to believe in God without fear of repercussion. He dreamed in loving only one woman for life. And he dreamed of serving a cause better than himself and greater than himself. And hell, he was batting 1,000 in Somalia. You know what I mean? He believed in God. He married one woman that he just had a baby with. And he died serving a cause greater than himself. So it starts now. And the cause greater than ourselves when we were Rangers was each other.
Yeah.
And if you narrow it down to the microcosm, we can't help every Ranger, but I'm going to help the next Ranger. That's what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? I can't help them all or go to sleep thinking about helping all, but the next one that presents help that's more fucked up than me, I'm gonna go out of my way to help them, man. And that's what the regiment taught me. That's the leadership model that the regiment showed me with the people that came before me, the people I served with, and then the people who've been there since I left. And your generation has taken it to a crescendo, man. The regiment's amazing, man. It's awesome. I always love getting around them guys. I'm a little worried that this generation doesn't. They've been barraged with forgetting the past, like get rid of monuments, all that kind of stuff. And I've really had a decaying effect on them wanting to be around guys like me. You know what I mean? I'm saying there's a microcosm. Some of them just don't want to hear it. And I understand, you know what I mean? I tell them, look, man, I only had one day in combat, but it was terrible. You know what I mean? Like that. You know what I mean? Terrible. And I'm not saying it because I'm better than you. I'm saying because I want you to tell me your stories so we can at least navigate this fucked up thing called life together. You know, help you in any way. I'm not doing it because I want to tell you I'm better than you. I'm telling you because you got someone here that's willing to listen anytime you want, you know? Because no one out here is ever going to understand a two-way gunfight, especially when it's mayhem. They won't understand it. They'll think they'll think they're watching one of them freaking Netflix shows. You know what I mean? They'll think it's like DC. You know what I mean? Like a bank got robbed. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's a bank robbery without the money. Yeah. So between 2001 when I left prison on parole, ankle monitor for 6 months, it was crazy. But anyway, to basically 2015, I just was so embarrassed. I didn't want to be around Rangers. You know what I mean? I kind of got in a hole. Luckily, I met the woman I've been with since 2001 now. Yeah. I mean, 2001. We started dating, but in 2001, we moved in together. But in 2016, my Ranger buddy from Somalia, Dave Floyd, called me and said, JB, I want you to come to Special Operations Wounded Warrior Hog Hunt. I'm like, Hog Hunt? And I'm thinking he's joking. I'm thinking he's talking about fat girls. You know, I'm from B Company 375 in the 90s. I'm thinking, what? We're going to Hog Hunt? But he's like, no, man, you're gonna come right around the side by side, and these dogs are gonna chase these hogs. And when they bang them, you're gonna run up and stab them. I'm like, run up and stab them. I'm like, dude, you know, I'm like 60 pounds heavier than I was in the day. I'm like, you talking about running? No. But so me and him talked on the phone for a while, and it was awesome, like we were kidding. I finally, I talked to my wife about it. She goes, you ought to go. She goes, you ought to go. And, man, it changed my life, for the first time after what I went through, the embarrassment from the way I got out. But I got there, and it was like me and Dave never left battalion. You know what I mean? It was like the day before, October 3rd, we were talking about being in the hangar, and so I went there and I met guys that served in the GWAP, some operators that rolled first bat, second bat guys are now operators. They'd all been shot up, and I'm talking to them, and they wanted to hear my story, right? So I was so humbled by that. They're like, tell me about that. Tell me about Somalia. Yeah. Then I gave them a Ranger perspective, and what's crazy is I had a map. This is crazy. I don't know why I brought it. I had, about 8 days after I got to Walter Reed, they wanted me to, I don't even remember who it was. It was some JSOC debrief where they wanted me to talk about my actions of what happened on the convoy. Because I was in the last Humvee on the insurgent convoy chasing that damn crash site, right? It was awful. Yeah. The Mutant Ninja Turtles for fucking 6 hours. You know what I mean? It was crazy. But anyway, I took this map out. For some reason, my dad was there, and my dad still had no idea what I did as a Ranger, right? He just knew I was crazy, jumping out of plane. All he ever seen was videos, you know what I mean? Yeah. But now we're in the hospital, and I'm looking at this map, and I'm actually using my skills I learned as in 10th grade. I went to school for architectural drafting design. I remember how to do arrows, so I was using the arrows to plot our route, and I'm showing this dude our route, what happened, where we got turned around, why we didn't make the right-hand turn. And I had this map I showed him. He'd asked, would you make another one of them so I could take it? So whatever happened to that map, then I gave JSOC, but I still had this one. And I took it with me to Sal. And a guy who went on to become the unit sergeant major up in Bragg asked me, because I had that map, would I show him on the hood of the truck, and talk about the actions, man. And me and him became best friends that night. I told him everything that went down with where things went wrong, what I thought was wrong. But that was the first time I felt like, I'm like, this is awesome, man. There's guys that are asking me. And I would later learn that, these were guys that felt like they needed me to help them come home. I would learn later from them, man. So it was like the big responsibility pill hit me in the face again. You know what I mean? I realized there was something else I wasn't doing. You know what I mean? And what it was is just making myself available. And it led to me, I started like guys started calling me and I wasn't working. I was living off my pension and I had a mortgage and, I didn't have a lot of money, but the one thing I could do was buy mega bus passes, like the bus that drives up and down the East Coast and shit. I started going to guys' houses that were home from war. My buddy that was in B Squadron got shot up real bad. That was in 3rd Battalion in Panama, and he went on to serve in GWAT. And I went to stay with him for a week and just hear about, what he was struggling with. And it was like God started giving me little ways to deal. A call from Freedom Alliance that they wanted me to go up to Alaska on a fishing trip with a bunch of guys from Black Hawk Down, and it was my Ranger buddy Dave Floyd. One of my squad members, Kevin Matthews, was a private in Somalia, PFC, I think in Somalia. Hadn't been to Ranger school yet, but was impeccable, did awesome. On October 3rd, was a great Ranger. He went on to serve he went to OCS after he got out, or not OCS, RTC, became a lieutenant, and he ended up in 1st Ranger Battalion, and he was the platoon leader as a captain that led the mission into the Korengal Valley to get Marcus Luttrell. That was Matthews, and he was on this fishing trip. And that's the first time I heard that story. He told me that night.
Yeah.
And then so I was up there with a couple pilots that were crazy from task force we served with. You know what I mean? And we were up there in this freaking badass, badass lodge where they had alcohol all over the top of the counter. Like, you guys have at it. Like, you sure that shit'll be gone in the morning with these guys? There's like 15 of us, right? I'm like, well, sure enough, like the next morning, we've been up all night, ain't no one been to sleep. And they're like, y'all drank all that alcohol? I said, I told y'all you should have put it away. Anyway, I went on that fishing trip, and then it just it helped me just overcome, and I've never looked back. No narcotics, that kind of thing, But it took me that long after I got out to say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of counting on that shit, pills and stuff, and I'm done with that, man. And then hell, I got hunting dogs of my own, you know what I mean? So now I got a new addiction, you know what I mean? That's danger. This one's more healthy. I'm still stabbing hogs, so it's kind of dangerous, but that's the right brain Ranger logic. You gotta do something violent. You know what I mean? So, but that the empathy, Dave reached out to me and knew my whole story, knew everything, and he still was like, I don't give a damn about all that shit, JB. I care about you. So that's when I knew, all the things I'd been holding on to, I was too embarrassed to talk about, getting the way I got in trouble and all that shit. The one thing I'm so proud of, and I just say this, is that it happened in Italy, because I would have hated to embarrass the regiment, you know what I mean, to get in trouble. Man, it would have killed me. I had no loyalty to Italy other than the men in my platoon who I helped get ready to go to Bosnia, and they went on to Bosnia, you know what I mean? But I wasn't, it was different. If I'd have got in trouble in the regiment, I would have been broke. It might have been the end. But I did. And the people that knew me and know me for years and years and years, I finally figured out they didn't give a shit about the things that I had driven myself crazy over. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're worried about all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I did this and I did it. It was nothing. It was fucking nothing, man. You know what? This is crazy. So when I went to federal court, my crime was conspiracy to smuggle anabolic steroids, $2,136. And the second charge was I didn't report it. Tax evasion. Think about that.
That's a bitch.
I'm like, did I really just get charged with tax evasion on $2,000? I'm like, really? No, that's what they said. It was crazy, man. But anyway, I don't care. All that learning. I'm good. That didn't happen. I wouldn't be where I'm at. You know what I mean? I'll tell you a story about being in prison. You want to hear crazy? Ranger JB. So you have to have a job there, right? You have to have a job in prison. So they assigned me to the dish room, and it's Ramadan. Swear to God. So think about this. So there's 3 times a day when they send all the prisoners to the chow hall to eat. And then there's Ramadan, where the whole prison shuts down and everybody else eats in their cells, and then the Muslims get to break fast, and then we got to serve them in the cafeteria. Everybody else is eating bag lunches. I swear to God, right? So I'm in federal prison at this time, and I'm in the dish room, right? And there was this African American Muslim who just hated everybody that was Caucasian, Hispanic, just hateful. And he's a Muslim. He converted in there. And there's a conveyor belt. You put your trays on, and he puts his tray down and he flips it on the floor. And if you can imagine this, there's like a room with the dishwasher in it, and then there's a space between the conveyor belt and that wall that's in front of that, and there was a hallway. And the time it took him to turn his head after he flipped it on the floor to come out the other side, I had a tray in my hand. I jumped over the counter and I smashed him in the top of his head. I was like, Ranger, and I mean, and the guards, like the sirens go off. You got to hit the ground. I'm on the ground, and this dude's laying there. I smashed and broke the tray on his head, and he's bleeding. And the guards are just like, so they get us both in handcuffs and shackles, and they take me to the hole. And usually when you get in a fight in federal prison, they move you to another prison, right? But the next day, they come get me out of my cell, and they take me to the commandant's office, right? And I'm standing there in shackles around my ankles in there, and they open the door, and this guy stands up. He says, "Take them shackles off, take them." And he tells the guard, and they take the shackles off. He goes, "Come in and sit down." And I look up, and on his wall was a set of jump wings with a big yellow star and a 1st Ranger Battalion combat scroll. His name was Darrell Aker. He was a 1st Battalion Grenadier Raider. A day after, this guy handed me a Bible. No, 2 days later. Now I'm in the camp, and I got a job, and I'm thinking I'm dead. They're going to move me. I'm going to go. My family won't be able to visit me. You know what I mean? That kind of shit. And they didn't. He moved him, sent him to another prison. And then me and him talked for 3 hours about Mogadishu. He had questions, and I'm sitting there in the commandant's office. And then at the end of it, this is crazy, right? Think about this. This is our federal government. So the camp had 5 dorms in the camp, and they'd lock you down at night. Everybody's locked in this dorm. It's a big open dormitory, 100 people. It was the first time in my life I actually realized what a minority felt like, because I was one of 4 white guys in a dormitory with 92 black guys and like 3 Cubans. And me, 4 white guys, you know what I mean? And we're locked in at night, right? And have to community shower, but I'd been in the military. But this is my experience. But the fire alarms system was broken, right? So he's the camp commandant. You ready for this? I don't know if I should expose this, or this is true. It happened. But he says, "I got a new job for you, Ranger." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "I need a fire guard in G dorm, which means you have to stay awake all night, but then you can fuck off all day on the rec yard, and you can do lift weights, and I didn't have to do anything." So I'm like, "What does it entail?" He goes, "Well, you get to watch TV, and you get snacks, and you just got to pull the fire alarm. Fire starts in a concrete building, right?" He's like, "Ranger, I need you to do that." Now I'm like, "I'm the man. Everybody's doing it. Give me the keys. Let me fly." Like, can you imagine that? I'm like, "Don't give me the keys to the insane asylum." But that happened, man. That's one of the crazy stories, right? Like, I'm like, I can't do this. I should be gone. I should be. But then I was like, but he talked to me. He's like, "Don't get in any fights. It ain't worth it in here. Just don't hate. Just look straight ahead. Put blinders on. Do your time. You got to outdate. You're getting out of here. You ain't staying for life." So that was my one experience where I kind of, But after that, I confronted a lot of my inherent prejudices in prison, being around people that were mostly African American, Hispanics that I'd never spent time around, and I realized we were all just squirrels and trying to put up nuts for the winter. We're all just trying to find nuts, put up, to take care of our families, whatever. And I made a conscious decision when I got out of there, I'd never go back to prison again. I wasn't about testing the laws anymore, or jail, you know what I mean? So that was that's all part of my testimony, and I believe it all happened so I can help people not make decisions to end up where I ended up. You know, I don't look at it as a glass, half empty thing. Oh, woe is me. No, hell no, man. I ain't never done nothing. Anything I got good at took at least twice to get good at. You know what I mean? I never did it good the first time. I had to do it wrong, figure out how to do it right. So I live by that, man. I'm still not afraid to make mistakes. I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and that's Rangers out there coming home from war. Need to know that you're touched. If you've been in a two-way gunfight where you've seen the enemy dead or you dead and you're close proximity, it changes you because them pictures never leave. And they come back at the weirdest times, you just can't believe it. But they're not trying to, drive you crazy. They're just trying to help you process it, right? Like you think about it. It means you got something you got to think about. But the only way we can get through it is with each other. And we need to remember, never shout down my comrades. Surrender's not a Ranger word. And we can't be afraid to tell Rangers they're all fucked up. You're all fucked up, Ranger buddy. I love you, man. But look, what you're doing ain't helping you, your family, us, me. I'm losing sleep. And I'm on a path now where that's all I live for. I just live for the next phone call, some stranger I never met that served in second bat, first bat, third bat. I don't care, regiment, and they call, and it happens frequently. SEALs even call me. Paul Mercer, he's my biggest advocate. He gives me people. You need to talk to my buddy John Burns, and I love it. It's a blessing. It's a gift to me, not my gift. It's a gift to me. It's a gift to be able to do that again, and I want to do it. Until I get called home. So I leave this physical life. I want to help Rangers find peace. After they've prepared for war, gone to war, now they're home from war. You know what I mean? And anything I can do, man. I mean, silver and gold have I not, but what I got is a lifetime of experience, one at a time. And I'm pretty fun to hang out with. You ask anybody who's ever hung out with me, they'll be like, "Oh, buddy, buckle your bootstraps." I'm kind of fun to hang out with. I think. Yeah. And I still drink beer. I'm like, people are like, "Oh, you're a Christian, you shouldn't drink beer." I'm like, the Jews drank beer in Egypt when they built all them damn temples. That's all they drank for 400 years was beer because the water was bad.
So do you have do you do like getaways or get-togethers or?
So a couple of years ago, I had a dream. Now it's informal. Anybody wants to come to my house, stay in a room, and hang out with JB for 2 or 3 days, I can get the money to fund it. Pay for you to fly here, get you back and forth to the airport, and then I'll feed you. I had a notion to do it myself, get bigger and stuff. But to be honest, there's enough nonprofits out there doing a good job. I want to be a microcosm guy where I do it informal, to where. People come to East Tennessee. My buddy Lou Goodman, we built a man camp. That's awesome. He was first bat, third bat, and the unit, C Squadron, 15 years. And what we do is bring people to his place, which is 18 miles from me, further into the mountains. And then I take my dogs. I raise hunting dogs, and we get in the side-by-sides. And we take 3, 4 people who come here at a time up into the mountains, and we chase hogs and tell lies, talk about each other's girlfriends and wives, and get everybody mad at each other. You start talking about their titties and stuff, you know what I mean? And their wives' titties, get mad at each other. And then we go back and drink a few beers, and we kill a pig, we cook it. If we didn't, we just cater in some food, we hang out. And I try to do it on an intimate level. I have some ideas for the Department of Defense that I'm working on right now as a program, which is to incorporate public-private, which is like all these nonprofits that are out there that support military people. I have an idea that they could use AI. Like the military keeps good records of, say, a fire team that all were in one gunfight together, you know what I mean? And I think they should use AI to not just send one guy. They should send all 3 guys from a fire team, places like Alaska, Oregon, Costa Rica, and let them hang out together. And that's the best healing that can be done, And I think the more intimate, the more small you can keep it, better it is. And then once a year, we like to have a throwdown to just say, "Hey, Rangers, come to Knoxville. We're going to have a party. We got a circus tent rented. We got a band coming, and we got plenty of beer. We got craft brews donated. We got Tennessee Mountain Water, a bunch of shine donated." And that's that might sound crazy, you know, but it's what we do. And then we just,
No, that's all.
we figure out where guys are at in life from there. And then we have resources to send them. I've been doing it long enough to know all the other places where they can actually benefit. So I try to, I keep their names, and then I forward their names and get them on some trips. That kind of, so they can go, like Freedom Alliance, Special Operations Wounded Warrior. There's organizations out there that are already doing it way better than I ever could. And they have the infrastructure and they have bigger donors. And I need to be being JB and being intimate on a small scale. It's what I am. I'm a Ranger squad leader, and that's what I tell people, man. And
and that's kind of one of the things that I was hoping to, grow this into at some point is, getting boys together, like you said, like guys from the Adifa Dam, guys from Somalia, guys who are together in Panama, and just sit around the campfire, have some beers, and kind of tell the stories from each perspective.
We got a great place. I told you, his place is awesome. We got a great fire pit, masonry fire pit built. He's got a great building. We got a bar in the building. We got pictures on the walls of all the battles in Iraq, Afghanistan. He's got all the Dietz paintings. We got leather couches. It's a memorabilia. It's a walk. We've collected Vietnam stuff. We've collected so many things that we put up on the walls, and guys come. I feel like we have pretty good success. We had a big throwdown October 4th last year. It was awesome. We had like 350 people showed up. It was awesome. But we try to do that just because, I can't tell anybody what God can do for them. I just believe in a God that's done so much for me, man. And the only way I know to find out where someone's at is to meet him at the point of their need. So the way that is to bring him, that come hang out, and let's figure out who we were as young men, or who you were as a young man, who I was as a young man, and let's find some common ground. If I can help someone because of maturity, experience, and stuff, that's what I want to do, man. I think the microcosm healing is so much better than trying the VA macrocosm, where you feel like a sardine waiting to get put in a can. You know what I mean? That's what the VA is, man. You're just waiting on them to slap mustard on you and put you in a can and with all the other sardines, I think Rangers are special, and everything I am in life is because of that time earning that scroll. Everything in life. And if I go to my grave knowing that I earned a Ranger Combat Scroll, that's enough for me, man. It's success.
Yeah.
If God grants me the ability to keep a couple guys from starting pistols, then that's a plus.
Yeah.
That's a plus.
Yeah.
And so never surrender. That's surrenders.
Yeah, that bothers me a lot, man. And I get them, I think, for everybody's thing, but for me, it's like, I just couldn't do it for my, so that I can forget my pain and give it to my daughters. And the other thing that bothers me is my buddies like Baraza and Tomei, and those who would love to be here, they died so that, others didn't have to. And I think it's kind of jacked up to take that from them. So, but it's easy to tell people that you need to help people find how to prevent that. Because when I first got out, I went to a point where it got pretty close to putting a pistol to myself, and I'm totally against it. Like, I hate it. I think it's a sign of weakness, but it was like my mind was doing some weird shit. I had to call my buddy Will. I called him crying, man, and I was like, bro, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And he's always got my back, and he talked with me, and then I started, get help and stuff. But I realized I couldn't do it on my own because it's some kind of chemical imbalances and all these other things. And, still fighting it to this day. Today I had a rough day for no reason, like literally no reason. But, we're here today, or here now, and, we're talking, and it'd have been cool to have had, to be able to talk to you when I got out, and have somewhere to go, as opposed to trying to figure this out on my own.
Hey, you got it now. Oh, you know what I mean? We're here. I'm here. Here. Going forward, we just got to have a plan. Go on with a plan, do the Ranger thing, step back. Let's have a plan to get as many, to talk to as many people. You know what I mean? To just let enough people know, it's a simple way. Your Ranger buddy's easier to call than the VA hotline. Suicide for Rangers, like taking a high interest loan, like taking a 99% mortgage loan, right? And then being like, oh, I'm just going to default and divorce my wife and leave her with the debt. You know what I mean? Because the interest rate suicide charges other Rangers is you and me. The guys that I know killed themselves. It's a little piece of me's missing now, so I'm paying a high interest rate on them being here, man, because I can't help but think about it, man. And you know, you get negative 1 minute, and the next minute you're like, man, I can't do that. That's my Ranger buddy, you know. And it's a conundrum. Yeah. It's a paradox that I don't want anybody to go through. I don't want anybody to go through, man. There's too many people out here that are willing to say I love you in spite of yourself, man. There's too many people out here. So to me, it just takes the courage to say, I'm gonna call this perfect stranger, this old man who's in Somalia, and just hang out with him, talk to him, and then you never know, man. You know, take that step. Like that first Little Bird ride. I was scared to death. Yeah, how about that? First stanza of Ranger Creed. Recognize I volunteer as a Ranger, fully known to have as my chosen profession. Yeah. You might say that shit and rip, and then they strap you to a fucking Little Bird pod at 20 feet doing 90 knots. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, yeah, I knew what I was getting into. No, you're lying now. You're lying. Yo, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, like I said, trying to set the example for the younger generation as well as some of the older, you know.
Yeah, you do.
It's difficult. It's difficult to get started. And, you know, and my biggest thing is
take no thought for tomorrow. Today holds enough for any man. Today, if you just focus on what can I do today to advance what I'm doing, something simple. Calling a guy you want to interview in 2 weeks. Every day you got to make sure you're putting one foot in front of the other. Every day. It's a simple thing. You know what I mean? The simple thing is, the other thing you got to do is not be afraid to reach out to other people who may be doing it a little different than you, but saying, hey man, what would you suggest? You know what I mean? And then it's about exposure. Hey, you picked the right guy if you want some exposure. I mean, and I know everybody, man, and I'm already putting the word out. You know what I mean? And most people know me for my antics. You know, I'm not a legend. I'm a legend because of antics. I'm not a legend because of, like walk the straight line. If I end up a legend, it's not going to be because, of the stuff they write in officer books. You know what I mean? It's going to be, I don't know how to say, Spec 4 Mafia, Brigands and Hooligans. I'll be in the Brigands and Hooligans Hall of Fame. If they ever come up with one of them, that'll be me.
Cool.
But look, anything else?
No, brother, I appreciate you.
Yeah. Hey, God bless and have a good night, man.
Hey, I appreciate your support, man. That was an amazing interview. John Burns is always awesome to talk to. Become a big part of my life. Very excited to have him. I'm also very excited to tell you that we got a lot of other warriors coming. We got a sniper that was on the Haditha Dam that's coming up. We got a Ranger medic. We got a bunch of Rangers from Grenada all the way to, modern day war now, as well as other operators. I appreciate your support. If you guys could please hit up Operator Debrief on both YouTube and Rumble. Like and subscribe. It's free. Also, we have the Patreon, which we're starting to get busy with. You'll see. That's where you'll get to see extra content. The Patreon does have a couple price packages, but that's where you'll get to see other content, skits, kind of funny things that we like to do and screw around with, but maybe different characters. But anyways, I appreciate your support, and thank you.